You are listening to the Fitz and Healthy podcast. I am your host, Dr. Lauren Fitzgerald, also known as Lauren Fitz. I'm a medical doctor, a fitness instructor, an entrepreneur, a health and fitness coach, but most importantly, I am a lover of life. And here on the Fitz and Healthy podcast, I intend to give you a ton of great information and knowledge that will serve as potential power so that you can live a life by design and make it more fits and healthy. And don't forget to listen to the disclaimer at the end. I'm not your doctor, yo. All right, enjoy the episode. Much love. Ciao. Hello and welcome to the Fitz and Healthy podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Lauren Fitz, and today I'm not only joined by my beautiful co-host, Cinthanie. Hey, girl.
Hey, girl. Hey.
But I am joined by someone that I am totally honored to interview today, Mr. Mark Sisson himself from Mark's Daily Apple, also known as the Primal Man. What's up, my friend?
Hey, it's always good. All good in the hood here in Malibu. What can I say?
Well, I'm not sure if you know, but I'm actually not really your neighbor, but I just moved to SoCal in December. So I'm in Orange County, like literally down the road from you.
Yeah, literally down the road, about a 3.5 hour drive in traffic,
depending
right?
on the traffic. But I probably am never going to leave here because this weather is just amazing. I'm from Texas and the summer heat is enough to keep me away.
It's cold here for you, huh?
I know, right?
Yeah.
So thank you so much for spending time with us today. Cinthanie and I are on a quest to help people give the tools to live a more fit and healthy life. And everything that we talk about here is so that we can empower the listener. And our listener is a little bit different than your average listener because most people in the endurance world, in the CrossFit world, in the paleo world, they know who you are. But the people that follow us are actually, some of them are like, okay, now who is this guy? So I'm really excited to bring you into their world because what you don't know about me is that I'm a medical doctor who left medicine because I saw the need for me to help people in such a bigger way by giving them the tools to be healthy so that they don't need a medical doctor.
Perfect.
And so I left medicine about 2 years ago, but I have this big platform where people find me on YouTube because I teach this dance fitness format, right? I know, right?
Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes.
Have you ever taken a dance fitness class before?
I haven't. No, sorry.
You might
gotta
need to
put
do
it on your
right?
list of
Okay,
to-dos.
it's on my list. All right.
If you're ever in Orange County, you better
Okay.
look me up, okay?
All right.
So, but that's the thing is that a lot of people that find me are on this journey that's different than your average person that follows you, because most people that follow you have been in the gym, have been on the trails, are on their bikes, and are already athletes, right? Most people that find me are people that are scared of the gym. They are intimidated. They feel ashamed of how they've gotten their bodies. They can't afford to go to a gym. And they finally find some kind of exercise on YouTube in which they can start doing. Now, I was that classic person, and listening to your book about the chronic cardio, you spoke to me because that was me. And I'm still fighting this. But my aha moment was when I was practicing medicine full time. I was teaching a crazy hard class 4 times a week. And I saw my video and I'm like, man, I'm carrying a lot of extra weight. Why is that? And that was the first time that I started really delving into nutrition. And then that's when I came across your book. And literally I bought this book probably like 2 or 3 years ago. I think it came out the updated version came out in 2016. Yeah. And I actually, my dad, I sent him because my dad he's about your age, but has always been just a great example of health. He's always been active. He's always hung with people much younger than him. And health and fitness has just always been important to him. So I completely related with you. And I feel like, I'm sure people tell you this all the time, but I feel like I already know you and I had a bond with you, even though you don't know it. Mm. So good. Of course, we're here today to talk about your book that's coming out October 3rd. But I love the fact that it's coming out now because this topic is such a hot topic. Mm. And because I am not only a fitness professional, but I'm also a medical doctor, people are asking me about this all the time. It's the whole keto right?
Yeah.
So I love the fact that you have been preaching this lifestyle like long time before it was the thing, before anyone really knew what keto meant. And a lot of people still don't know what keto means.
Right.
So can you tell to our listener, because most of our listeners don't really know jack squat about you. Can you briefly tell them why they should even be listening to you?
Yeah, really. Why listen to me? I'm not a doctor. And I don't teach dance classes. So.
No, but you have so much great information that I know will empower them. So
sure. So, I mean, I was a geeky kid, and at the age of 11, 12, 13, I started reading books on how to live longer and how to be healthy. And I don't know, where that came from, but it did happen. And I started to put two and two together and use the conventional wisdom of the day. And I read Ken Cooper's book on aerobics, which suggested that if you jogged, you earned all these points that credited you toward a longer life and a healthier heart. So I was into collecting points. So I got a lot of, put a lot of miles in. The other sort of conventional wisdom of the day was that you eat lots of carbohydrates, particularly complex carbs, to fuel all those miles. And so I did that. And for a number of years, I got race fit. I got into racing. I ran 5Ks, 10Ks, marathons, triathlons eventually. I got really, really, really fit, one of the best in the country. And I looked really fit, but on the inside, I was falling apart. And within 5 or 6 years, I started to get osteoarthritis. I started to get tendonitis in my hips. I started to get injured a lot more often. I had always had IBS, and it got worse with this running.
Of course.
Gastroesophageal reflux, a heartburn on a regular basis, sinus infection. I mean, you name it. I had it. It was like terrible. I entered this whole journey to try and get healthy. And even though I was race fit and looked good on the outside, low body fat, I was falling apart on the inside. So retired from competition at the ripe old age of 29 and dedicated the rest of my life to figuring out ways that I could be healthy and fit and strong without, making these mistakes and going down these wrong paths. So for the last 35 years, I've been dedicating everything I do to finding the ways in which the body works. And now we know in the last decade that so much of what happens to us is a result of genetics, of the genes turning on and off. The level of control above the genes is called epigenetics. And that level is sort of determined by our behavior, the foods we eat, the amount of sun exposure we get, the way we choose to move or not, sleep, how much we play, how much we use our brains. And so all these things factor into how our genes rebuild us, renew us, regenerate us, recreate us minute by minute throughout the day. And I thought, well, that's really powerful. And, speaking as I am to a medical doctor, I really, my dream is for most physicians today to embrace that concept.
Preach.
So that, so that so much of what's going on in the medical system could be completely avoided by relatively simple changes in lifestyle. Now, they're simple to understand. Some of them are very difficult to incorporate. Like you tell people, well, you mean I can't ever eat dessert again, or I can't ever have a piece of bread again? It's a little daunting in that regard. By the way, that's not what I'm preaching. But
but we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Yeah. We'll ease into that one.
For real.
So
you went from a marathon runner to a triathlete. You actually hit a world record the year I was born in 1980, correct?
No.
Then
the VersaClimber. Yeah. I was thinking running no, it's a very esoteric piece of equipment. But in the early 80s, and I was already in my 30s. No. When was that? No, it was almost 1990 that I did the VersaClimber record. But so there's VersaClimber that has been the most feared piece of equipment in most gyms.
Right.
It's this climbing thing where you get on and your feet are climbing and your hands are climbing. And I set a world record for the mile climb. But I was in my late 30s when I did it. I was already retired from racing and retired from marathoning and triathlon. But I noticed you sort of had this little thing that you're still dealing with, like you don't like to let go of that training. And
it's hard.
And so I kept training, even though I wasn't racing anymore, and I was fit enough to be able to do this record. So that's on my resume somewhere.
Your heart rate stayed in what range? I know the answer, but tell the audience. It's crazy.
So I did this climb in 22 minutes, and my heart rate stayed at 186 beats a minute for the entire 20 minutes. But I warmed up into it. at that age, in my late 30s, that was basically my theoretical max heart rate anyway. And in the prior 20 years of running and racing and all this stuff, and hundreds of thousands of miles of competing and training, I'd never held my heart rate that high for that long. So it was a really, and I literally paid the price for a couple of weeks after that, which is
right. I can imagine.
Yeah, I got pretty sick because I fried my immune system. But you realize that that's one of the many epiphanies I've had over the years about training, and that's why about 15 years ago we coined this phrase chronic cardio, which describes how people tend to go out there and they want to exercise, and then they do too much exercise.
Yep.
And then in doing too much exercise, they put themselves in this heart rate zone where the body isn't able to respond because it's not fast enough to get real breakthroughs, but it's too fast to be good at burning fat. And so you promote this ongoing cycle of burning through sugar all the time, and you never get good at burning fat. And one of the things I noticed, and I know you've probably seen this with a lot of patients and people at the gym, you see people on a treadmill, and God bless them, they're there every day, 5 days a week. They're doing half an hour, 45 minutes, sweat coming off their bodies and the towel and all the stuff. And no change. You still got the same 25 pounds to lose, 4 years later. Well, it's all about the diet. And that's really how I've kind of restructured how I teach people about ways in which to live an awesome life and how to do it with ease and grace and not so much, struggling and suffering.
At what point in your journey did you realize that the nutrition epiphanies that you came across were actually this word that we call primal, that is essentially your brand?
Well, I started, looking at performance nutrition 30 years ago. I mean, I was always into fueling for performance, but the assumption in those days was lots of carbohydrates, carbo load, manage your glycogen. Maybe you'll learn how to burn fat reasonably well, but it's still all about the carbs that you take in. So the biggest epiphany was realizing that we're not really designed to be doing that much work for that long a period of time on carbs. It's it creates a lot of free radical damage, a lot of reactive oxygen species. It's very stressful to the body. It causes a lot of release of cortisol. There could be, long-term adrenal issues, which is one of the biggest issues with endurance athletes is adrenal fatigue over years of training. Sometimes they just never get it back. And so it was about looking at fuel partitioning and seeing, how can we become a more efficient athlete, burn fat at a much higher rate, and not be so reliant on not just the carbs that we loaded the night before, but all those goos and gels and carbo, things that we have to take during a race. And that's one of the first epiphanies, was that we are really, at our essence, we are fat burning beasts. We're not born to be sugar dependent. We just happen to grow into that because of the lifestyle that our parents and society has put upon us because of all this access to all these carbs and things. So the early adoption of the primal blueprint and a look at what happens to the genes when you give them the appropriate signals. Like I want to burn fat, I want to build muscle, I want to boost my immune system, and those are all controlled by genes that we can switch on or off based on certain choices. So what are the food choices that help me build muscle? What are the food choices that create a system where I burn fat much more efficiently and I don't rely on carbohydrate feedings every couple of hours? That became the basis for not only the paleo diet, but the primal blueprint. And the primal blueprint, which is my brand, became a lifestyle, which also embodied, how I train, moving around a lot at a low level of activity, but sprinting once in a while, lifting heavy things, getting adequate sleep, using the brain, things like that. It was a totality of lifestyle, but all of which is contemplated to still to have you in a great space where you are healthy and fit and strong and at your ideal body composition, and you never get sick or rarely get sick, that you have all the energy that you want all the time, that your productivity at work is as good as it can be, that your relationship isn't faltering as a result of your moods. So much. All
hangry is not a good state of being.
and hangry became a word in the vernacular in the last 2 years, and it's a real thing.
Totally.
But it isn't with my people because we've learned how to control hunger and appetite and craving.
Yeah.
Okay, so was there a moment in the last 35 years where you realized, okay, I have made the transition going from a sugar burner to a fat burner? Or did it just happen gradually? Like at what point? Because obviously this wasn't common vernacular.
Right. It happened gradually. Now, truth be told, I was always a lean guy. I always had, so when I was a marathoner, I had, 7 or 8% body fat. I weigh 25 or 30 pounds more now, and I still have pretty much the same body fat. So I put on a lot of muscle once I stopped destroying myself with hundreds of miles of running.
And you got sick a lot too, right?
And I got, oh my God. Yeah. So it was just, I got sick a lot, and I had IBS, which basically dictated every move I made every day. Where's the nearest bathroom in case pretty bad.
It's more debilitating than people think.
Oh, absolutely. And it's depressing, and it has these layers of effect on you that just go beyond the physical sensation of pain, for instance. But the real epiphany for me came when I'd already been writing about health and fitness and diet and exercise for years. And I'd been on TV shows and talking about lifestyle and combining exercise and diet. But I hadn't really looked closely at grains. And so in my case, I'd even done some research on grains, and I noted that some grains, particularly those that have gluten or an analog of gluten in them, were problematic for a lot of people, whether or not those people had celiac.
Right.
But I was sort of ignoring it myself, and I was eating whole breads and whole grains, and and I thought, well, and then my wife one day, just out of the blue, she said, "Why don't you just, you're miserable." And this was at a time when I was producing a TV show, and I was under a lot of stress, and I thought all my IBS pains that would wake me up in the middle of the night in excruciating pain was a result of my stress. She said, "Give up grains for 30 days and see what happens." Well, I did, and it just completely
changed everything.
Everything.
What made her think to do that?
Because she'd done it. She had done it on her own a couple of months prior.
Interesting.
Because she's really into fitness and health. I mean, we're.
I've seen y'all's picture. Y'all are a hot couple.
So I don't do this in a vacuum. She's there doing a lot of this stuff with me, and she's led the way in some of the training routines and things like that. So.
Can I ask you, because one of my friends went through her stuff and found this picture. Do you see this picture of you?
Oh, that's not her. So that's
an old picture, right?
That's not a picture of me, and that's not a picture of my wife.
You're kidding.
No, that's
that's awesome.
No, that's a book. I wrote that book under contract for another company, and that actually is one of our best girlfriends, who is still. We just went to Greece with her a few weeks ago. And then Rob, the guy there, Rob Mackle, I haven't heard from him for literally 25 years or whatever. So I'm surprised I didn't remember his name. But some people think that's me and my wife.
Oh yeah. My friend came across it and sent me that screenshot.
Yeah, if that's what I'm going to look like, then I'll do it. Yeah. But if you see some more recent shots, she's very fit for 62 years old.
Most definitely. Yeah, no, you two are both hashtag goals. I mean, for many of us. Yeah. How long have you two been married?
27 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
Have you always been on the same page when it comes to nutrition?
Oh, no. God, no. She's, which is interesting because she was a vegetarian when I met her because her parents were like religious convert vegetarians. They converted in their 40s, and it was a complete shift that they were never going to backtrack from. So they're in their 80s today, and they're healthy, and they're still vegetarians. But so my wife was a vegetarian for a long time, but about 10 years into our marriage, she was low on energy, and I suggested she started getting a little bit more animal protein, and it really shifted for her a lot.
Nice.
She got pretty quickly that, you can survive. She could survive on a vegetarian diet, but she couldn't thrive on it.
Right.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it.
But then she raised, both of our kids. I sort of backed off and let her, have her way with raising
smart man.
kids. Yeah, exactly. Right. So until the kids were 2, they were raised vegetarian. I mean, they breastfed almost up until 2 anyway, but they were eating vegetable foods. And then my daughter, at one Thanksgiving, or she was around 2, a little over 2, and we had a big expatriate dinner in California where all the East Coast people had, come out here, and we all got together once a year. Like 16 of us around the Thanksgiving dinner table, and at the one end of the table, I hear this. Somebody yells, "Hey, can Devin have some turkey?" And then my wife says, "Oh no, she's a vegetarian." And then someone else says, "Not anymore, she isn't."
All righty then. Don't you love it when someone helps you with that?
She'd been wandering around the table eating pieces of turkey that people had given her. So and then she became, quite the quite the carnivore after that. So but then my son, he stayed vegetarian for most of all of his life. He's 23 now. He's still a vegetarian. He sort of, now he tells me in true confidence, he says, I wish you hadn't raised me as a vegetarian because I want to eat meat, but the texture of it is, I find it difficult to get past the texture. I never thought about that until when he was 17, we went to a restaurant one night and he said, you know what, tonight I'm feeling daring. I'm going to try some chicken, some steak, and some fish. So we tried some cooked chicken and tried some cooked steak, and then he tried some sashimi because that was what the fish was. And of the three, he liked the sashimi the best. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Raw fish for a vegetarian? Well, it was because the texture of it was like avocado. He had no preconceived notion of cooked or uncooked, or no judgment on cooked or uncooked. He just was looking at the texture of it. So that was, now he's since incorporated, and he always did have cheese and eggs and some things like that. And now that he's 23, since in the last 4 or 5 years he started lifting weights, he's actually bigger than I am now, and he's strong, and he's like one of the best athletes all his friends know, and he's the smartest kid in school. So you can't argue with those sorts of results. But he does use protein powders, and he does supplement with enough protein to make sure that his needs are met through lifting and climbing and all the sports he does.
Okay, so cyclic ketosis is something that in all of the past stuff that I've read from you, you've been talking about for a long time. This is not a new concept to you, although it's a new concept to a lot of people. So let me ask you this. What got you from the mindset of, I agree, and I believe that you still agree with cyclic ketosis, but what made you want to go into a period of ketosis that lasts longer than just a week or two at a time?
So I got this book deal. I published all my own books for the last 12 years, but I got a great deal with Harmony, and they wanted to do a book on the ketogenic diet. And for me, keto has always been something I've dabbled in for a couple of days at a time. In other words, cyclic ketogenic.
Right.
Because when you are primal, your carbs are low enough that you become good at burning fat. I mean, there's no issue there. The question really is, how good can you become, and how can you get to that level of fat burning where you become it's no longer necessary to even consume that much in the way of carbohydrate because you're good at generating ketones. So I was there, but in order to do the best possible job on the book, I said, well, I'm going to go keto for 2 months and
absolutely
see what happens. And I dove in deeply, and it was pretty profound. I mean, the energy level went up, and I always have good energy anyway.
So you could tell a difference in the energy level.
I could tell a difference in energy level. The most interesting thing, and I'm going to post this, but there's a photograph of me on the internet.
There's a lot of them, by the way.
With my shirt off.
There's a lot of those too.
In front of an armoire that I took like 9 years ago when my wife just said, "Oh, honey, you look pretty good. Let's take a shot." And then the next thing you know, that became a meme. So I recreated the shot in April after I'd been in keto for 2 months, and I looked more cut and more ripped.
Almost 10 years later.
Almost 10 years later. Yeah. And so from the age of 55 to the age of 64, pretty big difference there in age, and yet to get that sort, and it didn't have to work. I wasn't training any harder.
Yeah.
Right.
That was the big thing. I don't like to train that much. I have nothing to train for. I lost my mojo. Right. Which is my wish for you, Lauren. Once you lose your mojo, then it'll all be good, and you won't have to do the chronic cardio anymore. And,
it's my type A personality. I'm trying.
I know, but you're young yet. It'll happen.
I take pride in the fact that when people come to my class, they burn the most in my dance fitness class compared to all the others. But because of everything I've learned from you, I went and finally bought a heart rate monitor, and I'm trying my hardest to keep it the 180 minus age, which is 143. It is. Yeah. It's not easy.
But it's so, if you understand the science behind it, it's so perfect. It makes such great sense. Not the 180 minus your age, but the fact that number represents the maximum heart rate you can achieve and still be almost 100%, is 90%, aerobic, and not be dipping into glycolytic reserves. Where were we before that?
We're all over the place.
Yeah.
No, one thing I definitely want to make sure that we cover is, because so many of our listeners don't understand. You say fat burner, but how do they get to that fat burning stage?
Yeah. is really quite diverse in its in sources of fuel. We can burn carbohydrate, which the body recognizes as glucose or glycogen. So glucose is blood sugar. Glycogen is a stored form of glucose that's stored in the muscles in relatively small amounts in the liver. That glucose fuels the brain. So the brain uses 20% of all the calories we use all day long. It's a small organ, but it's a very big user of energy. And so for most of us who are basing our eating habits on carbohydrate intake, so that we have 6 to 11 servings of grains, breads, and pastas and what at the base of our pyramid, and then we have some vegetables and some fruit, and then a little bit of meat and almost no fat. If you were to listen to the U.S. Department of Agriculture,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we know better. We don't.
Yeah. So what happens as a result of that, and this ridiculous mantra that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. That was something that the Florida Orange Board and
Kellogg's,
CW Post and Kellogg came up with years ago.
Preach.
Basically, yeah. So you wind up having access to so much in the way of carbohydrate that you never tap into the body's fat stores, because the body goes, dude, if you're going to give me this sugar all day long, I'll just burn the sugar. Because the human body, at any one point in time, we really only have like a teaspoon's worth of sugar in our bloodstream. We don't need that much, but we keep filling ourselves full of glucose or glucose generating carbohydrates.
Because aren't we supposed to eat 5 to 6 meals a day?
Yeah, no, that's the other thing, because we're grazers, and so we have all these old mantras from conventional wisdom that go back 40 years that are now proven to be not just wrong, but dangerous. So we get into a situation where we feed ourselves carbohydrate at every meal. That causes a release of insulin from the pancreas, because the body knows that too much glucose in the bloodstream is dangerous. I mean, that's really what, type 2 diabetes is, an inability to manage excessive amounts of glucose. And yet we keep feeding it glucose and feeding it glucose. Well, the more glucose we feed our body, the less the body has any desire to take fat out of storage and burn that for fuel, because we have this excess of fuel. So over the years, people tend to accumulate more and more stored energy in the form of stored body fat, because they never take it out of their body fat stores and they never really burn it efficiently or effectively. So the idea behind the primal blueprint originally was to get rid of starchy carbs, sugars, sweetened beverages, all the candies, pies, cakes, all the things we pretty much know we shouldn't be eating, right?
Yeah.
Truth be told. But that leaves you with meat, fish, fowl, eggs, nuts, seeds, vegetables, a little bit of fruit. And you kind of have to work to get more than 150 grams of carbs a day in that kind of a diet. So that's already kind of a low carb eating strategy. So from there, if you drop the carbs even further, the more you lower your carbs, the less opportunity the body has to make glucose. And therefore, the more you're sort of forcing the body into saying, okay, if this is what's going to happen, then we're going to take fat out of storage. We're going to learn how to burn it more efficiently. And we're going to be good at become what I call fat burning beasts, and not so reliant on another meal or another bolus of carbohydrate or another snack at 2:00 in the afternoon, or another bagel at 10:30 in the morning with a cup of coffee. And over time, you get good. You become good at burning fat, and that's great. But then keto is like the next level of becoming good at burning fat.
Yeah.
So I use keto, and by the way, the term ketogenesis means your liver is making ketones from fat. Now, ketones are a safe, natural fuel that humans have not only existed on, but depended on for survival for millions of years.
Yes.
So it's not unusual. It's actually how we're wired.
Yeah.
So ketogenesis is the process of the liver making ketones from fat. Ketosis, which is referred to a lot as the excess of ketones in the bloodstream, but it's basically the presence of ketones in the bloodstream. Typically, it's measured. Some people use a urine strip. They pee on a urine strip, and if it turns purple, it means there's ketones in their urine. Some people use blood glucose testing device, and they can tell how much millimolar they're showing of ketones, which is demonstrative of their being in ketosis.
Yeah.
But one of the kind of interesting things is that early people who are new to ketosis or new to keto eating will generate lots of ketones, and that's fine. But a lot of times they'll spill them out in their breath or the urine. People notice it on their breath, or they'll sweat
Keto
them
breath
out.
is bad.
Yeah.
It's a real thing too.
It's a real thing. It's not, and by the way, people who are sugar burners, which we call, carb dependent people, they might wake up one morning and not eat breakfast and do a hard workout. And by lunch, you can smell it on their breath.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not, it's not good or bad. It's just, okay, they're in ketosis as well. So you don't have to be a fat burner to be in ketosis. You generate ketones like all the time if you don't eat. So starvation is a great way to generate ketones. I'm not suggesting that, but it's a great way. Withholding carbohydrates is a great way to generate ketones because then you force your body to burn fat. And what happens over time is you start to build the metabolic machinery to burn fats at a higher rate of output and more efficiently. So one of the great things about the keto lifestyle is that you engage in this thing we call mitochondrial biogenesis, where the muscles start to make more mitochondria. And then mitochondria have their own DNA. And so that
from your mama.
Yeah, from your way back mama.
Exactly.
Maternal DNA.
Exactly.
And it's just fascinating stuff. So that mitochondria even get this signal, the epigenetic signal that, okay, we not only have more of us, but we have to be better at putting fat through, because if this human that I am, in one of the cells is going to keep withholding carbohydrate, then we just got to be good at burning fat. So we'll build that machinery, and that machinery will carry us through the next weeks or months or whatever. So one of the reasons that I think keto in general is great for anybody who tries it is that there's this upregulating of fat-burning enzymes, fat-burning systems, and an increase in mitochondria, which then unburdens you of having to eat glucose. And so you literally need less glucose to thrive in a day. And so people who've been in keto for a long period of time are so good at burning fats that their muscles don't even really burn glucose much anymore anyway, unless they're doing like an all-out total glycolytic Metcon workout in a gym, or they're sprinting or something like that. But even up to outputs of 90-95% of max heart rate, they're generating most of their energy from fats. Now, the other thing that happens is the brain becomes really good at burning ketones. And so the brain, you unburden the brain of having to take in glucose, which in the old days would have meant, well, I have low blood sugar and I'm getting woozy and I'm getting dizzy and I feel faint and I'm getting hangry. That was all because the brain expected glucose. And when you didn't give the brain glucose, when the liver was out of glucose and you hadn't eaten a meal, the brain goes, oh my God, what are we going to do? It's, it gets frantic. It sends signals to the adrenals to secrete cortisol, which is a stress hormone, to go to the muscles and strip the muscles of some of their protein, some of the amino acids, to send them back to the liver to become glucose to feed the brain, which is a very destructive process and
not efficient.
Not efficient, and winds up, causing you a drop in your immune function. So you get colds and flu more often, and it's just not good at all. And all of that, we circumvent all of that when we go into a keto strategy and we start to methodically drop the carbs and methodically teach our body how to burn fat more efficiently, and methodically teach the body how to build the metabolic machinery to burn ketones efficiently. So the brain really doesn't even need that much in the way of glucose. And whatever it does need, it gets from the glycerol part of the triglyceride, which is the fatty acid, the fat molecule. So that's how efficient the body is. It takes, I'm doing this below the screen, but it takes this part of the molecule, the three fatty acid molecule, burns that as fat, and then takes the glycerol and uses that as a substrate to make glucose, to either replenish glycogen or to send directly to the brain. So it's a very, very efficient system.
Yeah.
So this gets me to the next sort of concept that I've always had a real issue with, which is that people think that they want to build a machine that burns a lot of calories. Like they want to rev up their metabolism, right? My problem with losing weight is I have a slow metabolism. I want a fast metabolism, right?
Yeah. Such a canned response.
Yeah, and it's wrong. I mean, it's one way to do it, but it's not a way
long lasting.
Not long lasting. It's not going to generate health. It's going to have some aging consequences in the form of reactive oxygen species or free radical damage. So But, you know, you look at human nature, and human nature is, and I know you know people like this. Everybody who comes into your office goes, what's the most amount of food I can eat and not gain weight?
Absolutely.
Let me see. How much of a glutton can I be and not gain weight?
And I've done that a few times too. I'm not going to lie.
Everybody does that. Everybody does that.
Absolutely.
I mean, you know, when I was a runner, I was proud of my prodigious appetite and my ability to consume.
Did you really eat half a gallon of ice cream a night? Like for
every
real?
night? Every night.
My God.
For about 10 years. On top of, by the way, at least a 6-pack of beer, a loaf of bread.
That's crazy.
A whole chicken, a 2-pound bag of peas. I mean, I was
But that's why you were sick inside. You might have been thin on the outside, but you were sick on the inside.
Well, and I was partly thin on the outside because of all of the running I was doing.
Right.
I was thin on the outside because I had such a leaky gut that stuff passed through me, like, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, too much.
We always,
there, but, you know,
not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
We always think we can outsmart our systems.
Right. Yeah. So when you have this attitude, which is what's the most amount I can eat, that sort of translates into, okay, I don't want to leave my plate, you know, any food on my plate, because that would be disrespectful to the chef, or pay for it, and I'm not going to throw it away, or whatever that is.
My mama taught me better.
We have this mindset that we should be finishing everything on our plate. We have this mindset that 3 meals a day is what it has to be, regardless of whether or not you're hungry. You know, from day one in the Primal Blueprint, I said, if you wake up in the morning and you're not hungry, don't eat.
Yes.
You know, that's and in fact, that is one of the, we have in the Keto Reset book, which comes out October 3rd. We have, halfway through the book, we have a midterm exam. And if you've gotten to the point where you're good enough at burning fat, we have a series of questions that you have to answer before we let you go into ketosis, because
I love that.
We want you to be comfortable with waking up in the morning and not eating until 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, and being able to go about your daily routine. That's indicative of the fact that you wake up burning fat and that you don't need a quick hit of carbohydrate to get your day started.
So essentially those first 21 days before that midterm exam, you are getting a person that's reading this. So essentially your client that you're working with one-on-one, you're getting them to a fat burning stage before even thinking about ketosis, correct?
Correct.
Brilliant.
So then the ketosis part is just, doubling up the effort and getting to the point where now you become really good at burning fat, and now you start generating ketones, and now you start accessing this whole new world of energy, and then one of the things that happens, which I was alluding to a little bit earlier, and that is there's a very profound protein sparing effect of being in ketosis. So you don't need that much protein. You don't even need to have that many calories to maintain muscle mass, or in some cases actually add muscle mass and still burn off the fat. So in that photograph that I referred to earlier, I lost 6 pounds, but people at the gym were walking up to me going, "Dude, you're jacked. Have you put on some muscle?"
Nice.
Because guys like to hear that, you know.
Heck yeah.
Women not so much, but guys like.
Hey, we like to hear you're getting cut up. That's good.
Yeah.
No, but I think that's actually a misconception that I was just talking about on a live broadcast the other night, is that food companies, even healthy food companies, have tricked us into good marketing to make us believe that more protein is better.
Yes.
And so your percent of protein in your daily intake, what do you stay around?
So I don't do percents, because here's how I do it. I don't like that macro kind of thing. So my day is basically, I wake up in the morning, I have a cup of coffee, I go to work. I don't eat anything until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I typically, go to the gym around 9:30 or 10. I might do a hard workout. I mean, today I did a 45-minute hard bike ride. Now, see, I just talked about chronic cardio. It's the first one I've done in a long time. It's like a time trial. You're allowed to do them once in a while.
There you go. Okay.
Sure.
Every 7 to 10 days, according to you.
And yesterday I was traveling all day, so I didn't work out. So I just, anyway, but I have all the energy I want for this workout. So I work out basically fasted, and that could include a heavy leg day too. And then I don't eat anything after the workout, for the reasons being that I want to maximize the growth hormone and testosterone pulse that I get as a result of the workout. And then again, at 1 o'clock, 1:30, sometimes 2, I have my first meal. It's typically, and again, people say, well, you're keto, you must be eating like cheese and steak, right? And no bread and whatever. Well, I have a big giant salad as my first meal of the day, but it's got like, 7 or 8 kinds of vegetables in it and mixed greens. Bingo.
And some of this.
And some of that. And some of this.
Even
And some of that.
I've been a fan of yours since you came out with your Primal Kitchen brand. This is all I use. I stopped making my own dressings because yours are so good.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And the idea was, A, it has to taste good, but also it's got to be so healthy that the more you put on your salad, the healthier the meal becomes.
Yeah.
So with my big ass salad that I have for lunch, I'll have this giant salad, and then I'll have some cut up chicken on top or some form of protein on top. Not much, maybe 20 grams of net grams of protein. And then I douse it with a high healthy fat dressing. I made these dressings because I wanted to have access to healthy fats. And I hated the fact that most of my life I was told to use dressings sparingly because they're bad for you. And even though they taste good, you shouldn't be putting so much on because they're. So that's why we made this Primal Kitchen line of dressings. And we now have 5 of them and a new one coming out, which is the balsamic vinaigrette, which is
Oh, yum.
Oh,
Thank you,
that's
by
gonna
the
be my
way, for
favorite.
sending us all those goodies. It's
Yeah.
awesome.
No, it's our pleasure.
Oh,
So-
and for the record, I thought that I coined the phrase big ass salad, but I realized that you probably did it before me because my followers actually know my big ass salad because I will always share on my video what I put in my big ass salad.
2006 was the first
Yeah,
time.
you beat me. You beat me.
No, I love that your products, though, you didn't compromise on ingredients, but you also didn't compromise on flavor. Because I think it's such a common misconception that if you're eating healthy, you need to eat bland chicken and rice and vegetables, and that's it. And it's like that's not sustainable. Like, you're meant to have some flavor in your life. You got to enjoy like how you live. And so I love that your products are a staple of that.
I appreciate that because that was, it's flavor first and then ingredients just a close second underneath. But both of them have to be in total alignment. But the point was, when you clean up your diet and you get rid of sugar and you get rid of processed grains and probably whole grains in many cases, when you get rid of industrial seed oils, corn oil, soybean oil, canola,
liquid cancer.
You're left with a fairly short list of things you can eat. They're all great, but 5 kinds of meat, beef, pork, lamb, chicken, turkey, a couple of kinds of fish, 15 or 18 vegetables total that you're going to eat next year. What makes the difference is how you prepare them, the sauces, the dressings, the toppings, the herbs, the spices, the methods of preparation. And so I wanted a way in which I could take the same bowl of mixed greens and vegetables every day and make it a completely different taste experience because I'm a big fan of having a salad every day.
Right.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about my salad is if you took the chicken off it, it would be a perfect vegan meal.
Absolutely.
So it's so close to being the perfect meal for everyone because I still say even when you're keto, you got to have your vegetables because you want the fiber in there for your healthy gut biome, right? So anyway, that's what my day kind of looks like, and then I might have a snack in the afternoon, although sometimes I don't, and then I eat dinner around 7:00. So I have what we call a compressed eating window. So I eat within 6 or 7 hours, and then I don't eat for 18 hours or thereabouts.
I believe that's actually how I found you in the beginning of my nutrition exploration because I was learning about intermittent fasting, and I realized that you don't even call it that because you've been eating this way for long time.
It's funny to hear people talk about intermittent fasting and think that that's like somebody said the other day, I do intermittent fasting and they told me that they eat dinner at 7:30 and then they don't eat until like 9:30 the next day. It's like, okay, that's just,
that's regular. That's normal.
Well, it's not even that impressive. It's a start. But for me, true intermittent fasting is skipping a day of eating, and going more than 24 hours without eating. I mean, I don't mean to judge anybody else, but for me, I call what I do a compressed eating window. And even people who aren't into ketosis as much, guys like Art Devaney, he still basically lives that lifestyle where he'll skip a whole day of eating and does it with regularity because he says this is how humans evolved. We didn't evolve. We sure as hell didn't evolve to have 3 meals a day.
No.
We probably didn't evolve to have 1 meal a day. We probably evolved to have 1 meal every once in a while and then maybe gnaw on some berries or shrubs or something in between. But that's the beauty of what we're talking about here. So we have this innate, hardwired ability to become so good at burning our own stored body fat that we could go days without eating anything and thrive. Not just survive and stay awake, but go to the gym and lift weights and do all this stuff and thrive and get better as a result of it. It's pretty amazing when you understand how the body works. But it also, the danger here is if you come to this concept from having consumed 300 or 400 grams of carbs a day every day, and then say, oh, I just read this new book, I'm going to dive in feet first and go down to 20 grams of carbs my first day. It's just, that's not going to work. I mean, some people
setting them up for failure.
Some people can will themselves through it, but for most people, the low carb or keto flu, as we call it, ensues because when you haven't done the work and you haven't stair-stepped it down and you haven't become fat adapted, then when you withhold glucose from the brain just goes into this panic state and starts to secrete hormones that cause the adrenals to secrete cortisol, and becomes this whole stress response that is sort of counterproductive when you're trying to achieve better health.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Have you, in your experience working with clients one-on-one and in the masses, have you experienced much of a difference because most of our fan base are females. And I know, I mean, you have both male and female fans, but most of ours are female. And I know that is a common misconception that a lot of females have. Well, I've heard it's not good for my thyroid, or I heard it's going to slow my metabolism down because I'm a girl. What are your thoughts on that and experience?
Right. So on today, which was October 23rd, we did a post on keto and thyroid on Mark's Daily Apple and answered a lot of those questions. But the bottom line is, if you do it right, it's worth trying. Most people who do it right have a great experience with keto. Some who have maybe long-term metabolic damage, long-term thyroid issues, maybe some serious autoimmune things to dig into, might not have a great experience with keto. Certainly, women we have to acknowledge that there are hormonal differences with women that don't make it easy in some cases to stair step into this program. But still, we had so many, after we did the post, we had so many women write in and go, keto saved my life. And I was, I thought I was low thyroid. I thought I had thyroid issues, but I actually went keto the right way, and some of the thyroid issues resolved.
Right.
Yeah.
So, so there's, look, the human body is complex. That's why you spent 8 years learning about it.
For real.
And,
did your wife do ketosis with you for all 2 months?
But she did some a couple of weeks at a time. Yeah.
Okay.
And and so the original premise about cyclic ketogenesis was because I have friends who've been keto for 10 years and love it and hang out there and dig it. And I have a friend who eats one meal a day. And that's one of the things about ketosis. It's really quite compelling. And the keto, I don't even like the word ketosis, but I like the word keto and keto lifestyle. Because when you get really good at this, the body becomes so efficient at extracting calories and energy from the food you eat that it doesn't need that much in the way of calories. I found that my own caloric intake dropped by 30% as a result of doing that.
Which is great for anti-aging benefits as well.
Absolutely. And then your ability to go long periods of time without getting hungry or without appetite or cravings or hunger kind of dictating how you live your life. And it's pretty freeing to go, oh my God, it's 4:00 in the afternoon. I haven't eaten today. Oh, well, whatever, and to have that ability to just say, well, because my body is so good at generating energy, its own energy from my own stored body fat. And I'll give you an example. People say, well, don't you ever run out of body fat? Maybe, but, I'm 170 pounds. I'm 10% body fat, let's just say. Probably less than that. But that's 17 pounds of fat on me. That's enough.
That's energy.
That's enough to like walk 300 miles. So, it's energy. It's there. It's there for a purpose. The human body is designed to store body fat for the specific purpose of calling upon it later for energy in the absence of food. Problem is, so many of us never get to that point where there's an absence of food. So when you're keto and you start to build this metabolic machinery, you start to become more efficient. That's how you can get by on fewer calories. You're just more efficient at using the calories. And that goes back to that whole thing about, I want to build a fast metabolism. Well, I don't. I want to build a metabolism that's efficient, where I have the metabolic flexibility to burn fat when it's available, to burn ketones when I need to burn glucose if I've overdone it. If I just have a day where I say, screw it, I'm just going to have a Cinnabon or something. And
right.
Now the problem with that for a lot of people is once you clean your act up and you become that good at burning fat and that non-dependent on carbs, and you've eliminated grains from your diet, you can get yourself in a world of hurt eating a Cinnabon. You can
very quickly.
Very quickly. So that's the good news, bad news thing, but it's mostly good news.
Now, I know that a lot of our listeners have the combination of not only are they sugar burners, but their hormones that tell them that they're hungry and not hungry are totally out of whack. So in your experience, have you seen that it takes someone that has been a sugar burner for pretty much all their life? They've pretty much been obese or even morbidly obese. Do you feel like it takes them longer to get to the point where they can actually be tuned into those hormones and actually know when they're hungry versus just eating because that's emotionally what they did?
Typically. So yeah, I find that it's typically a little bit more difficult. So in the Keto Reset Diet in the book, we acknowledge that. That's one of the reasons we have this midterm exam. There are some people who are and it's typically a 21-day process to go primal first and drop the carbs and then go into keto. But we recognize that some people have, decades of metabolic damage and decades of eating so inappropriately that 21 days might not be enough to make that shift. And so they might spend a little bit more time in that indoctrination period before they get ready to go keto. But yeah, it's, I think keto is I think low carb in general, but keto in specific is the cure for type 2 diabetes. I mean, I think
amen. 100%.
There are 30 million people in this country diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and over 100 million around the world. In fact, places like India are just, it's horrendous.
Yes.
The amount of type 2 diabetes. And all of this could be, except in like less than 1% of the cases, could be alleviated by the appropriate eating strategy, which I think is low carb and involves some amount of manipulation with a keto phase, at least,
right,
a couple of weeks at a time. And of course, exercise and the right kinds of exercise.
Of course.
Yeah.
The sad thing is, though, that 99% of those people's doctors are Western medicine doctors, and we aren't given any nutrition in medical school. There's a few MDs and DOs that are given nutrition, but for the most part, I remember before I started my own journey, post medical school, post residency, I didn't realize that type 2 diabetes was even reversible. And now when I tell a person that, their mind is blown because their doctor who gives them their insulin prescription and treats their diabetes is telling them that this is a lifelong problem. And it's it's infuriating.
But we can manage it with drugs.
Of course.
So it's pretty frustrating. I mean, I've always said that type 2 diabetes isn't so much a disease as it's a current condition.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you can fix it. You can fix your current condition within a matter of days, by the way, by eating appropriately and drop your blood sugars down to a safe level. And if you're on insulin and you're type 2 and you're on insulin, reduce the requirement for insulin. If you're a recently diagnosed type 2, you can get right out of that. Until you don't, so it's a condition. So which is defined by sort of a range of blood glucose numbers. And A1C and a few other things. So over time, you can drop that to the point where you no longer are defined because your numbers are within acceptable range. So you're not a type 2 diabetic any longer. You have basically beaten it, and then if you go off the wagon or, start to go back to your old habits, you can reaccess that state and be type 2 diabetic again. But the point is, it's so completely mitigated by diet and exercise. And yet, for most physicians to not be aware of that or raise their eyebrows when you suggest that that's possible,
it's frustrating. It's
really
very frustrating. I always call myself a Western medicine doctor with a Eastern medicine mind because there's so many disease processes that I would have never thought could be fixed by just looking at food and nutrition.
Yeah.
But so many. And that's one of the reasons why this podcast is there, because so many of the people that follow me are not into health and fitness and are just starting to learn some basic stuff. And their minds are being open to the fact, what even eating primal is. Oh, and that gives me, my next question. So you're 21 days before your midterm exam, right?
Yeah.
How much different is that eating plan than your primal blueprint?
It's the same.
It is.
So, it's pretty much the primal blueprint, right?
Excellent.
The idea is to bring the carbs down to a manageable level, a realistic level And you only do it by getting rid of the crap that you should be eating in the first place.
Right.
Which I think most people recognize. But we play around with, what does appetite look like? And for instance, people who think that they have to finish their plate or think that they have to eat until they're full. What does that mean? I'm full. Because usually when you're full, it's too late. You've overdone it. So one of the skills is, how can we access a mindset where we're asking ourselves, am I really hungry for the next bite? And so that's maybe 10 or 12 bites into the meal, just a little kind of a skill set, a little thing that we develop. Like, am I really hungry for the next bite? If not, then there's food wherever I want it. It's available everywhere. Right. So I'm not going to die of starvation. And because I'm satisfied, I can put it away. Now, where that really comes in handy is like dessert, right? So you can say, well, here's a piece of cheesecake. Well, what is a serving of cheesecake? It could be 3 bites. It could be a little piece of a taster, or it could be a Cheesecake Factory size, which is okay.
And that's what most people do.
They gave me a serving. I'm going to have to finish it. Oh, well, but to be able to look at a dessert and go, it's not that I can't have the dessert. I'll just have 1 or 2 bites, maybe 3. I'll get the full experience of the sweetness, of the taste and everything. But then from there, there's no reason to have to finish the dessert. I got what it is. It tastes great. What's my motivation for finishing the whole thing? It just becomes a completely different experience. Now,
and I think getting to that point is the part that especially females struggle with, because not only is there the hormonal imbalance of ghrelin and whatnot, but there's that emotional imbalance of so many females eat to fulfill an emotional state.
Right.
And getting to that point where they can realize that, hear their hunger signals and act upon it accordingly. I think that's been a difficult, challenge for myself.
No, it's a huge hurdle to overcome, because so many people, women in particular, are emotional eaters for whatever reason. I mean, women tend to, I talk to a lot of women who have real traumas in their history, and there are real reasons that if they haven't really addressed those and dealt with them at a deep level, are going to continue to pop up and cause emotional eating. So it's not like that doesn't exist. It's not all in your head. It's in your head, but it's real, and it's something that needs, for a lot of people, ought to be dealt with as part of the reaccessing health.
Now, I know that you did keto for 2 months. So now that you have tried it out full-fledged, do you have a plan as far as I want to stay in ketosis, or I want to go in and out, or maybe I want to stay in it longer? What's your experience? What is it?
That's back to your cyclical comment, which is, now I'm keto. And what that means to me is sometimes I'm in ketosis. Sometimes I'm just out of ketosis. And so I play on the fringe. I play on the margin. I'm in ketosis today because I traveled for the last 2 days. So when I fly, I don't eat when I fly, and I skip meals. And so, yesterday I got up and I had to give 3 presentations before noon to all of the marketing managers at Sprouts, at the food company Sprouts. I didn't eat until dinner time. And it was fine. It was great. Right. And that's how I planned it. But I don't. So a lot of times I'll wake up one morning and go, you know what, geez, I haven't eaten much. I didn't have 20 grams of carbs yesterday or the day before. I'm going to stay deep in ketosis for a couple more days now that I'm here. But if I find myself out, if I have a dessert, or not, I wouldn't eat a big dessert, but something that was reasonable, like 40 grams of carbs for that evening meal that was going to take me out. It doesn't take me out for long. I mean, if I wake up the next morning, I don't eat breakfast, I do a hard workout, I'm back in ketosis.
Right.
So it's keto, and I like to call it keto, and I want to kind of own that term keto to describe that nice little area you get where you've built the metabolic machinery to access fats and burn them well and efficiently, to make ketones whenever you need them, but to not overproduce them. A lot of people who've been keto for 10 years, when you go measure their blood ketone levels, they're 0.5 or 0.4 millimolar, which is by definition not in ketosis. But then the other definition of ketosis is an excess of ketones in the bloodstream, right?
Right.
The people are so efficient and so good that the liver goes, I got this. We got this handled. We only make as much ketones as we need to feed the brain, because we don't even need to make ketones for the heart or the muscles, because the muscles are so good at burning fat that they got that handled, and we don't need glucose. And so it's this monitoring system throughout the body that over time develops this really intricate feedback loop that keeps things just in homeostasis, in balance, versus those early ketone people who go, dude, I was 5 millimolar today. And,
like it's a badge of honor.
I was blowing acetone all over the place, and it's like it's a badge of honor. And I'm like, dude, you're wasting all that valuable ketones. You're pissing them out. What is it? Breathing them out. Come on, hang on to that stuff. That's valuable currency.
Well, now this brings me. So Cinthanie and I were talking before you got on the call, and she had a question that I had ready for you. Cinthanie, do you want to ask him?
Yeah. What are your thoughts on exogenous ketones?
So I got mixed thoughts. I use them, but I use them very judiciously. I might take them Sunday mornings. I play a very hard game of ultimate frisbee with 20 and 30 somethings. And I can keep up with those little rascals.
Oh, I believe it.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure you would kick our asses. I'm just saying.
but not without cost. And so because I've done the work and I'm good at burning ketones, I'll take a ketone supplement before that event. Because I'm going to be running around in the heat for 2 hours, sprinting and covering 4.5, 5 miles of ground, mostly sprinting. Then I think that serves me well. Once in a while, in advance of a leg day or something like that in the gym, I'll take some exogenous ketones. But I don't. You know what? And I did take some before my talk the other day, because I was going to be talking for 3 hours, because I noticed the effect of ketones on my brain and my thinking. So it's really, so I use it again. I use them judiciously. Now I don't take them other than when I have a real good reason to start burning ketones immediately. So when people are using exogenous ketones to get into ketosis, like I see a lot of companies marketing products where if you're overweight and you want to lose weight, ketosis is the way to go. Take some exogenous ketones, you'll be in ketosis right away. Well, no, you won't. You'll be in ketosis. You'll have an excess of ketones from the supplement, but you won't be doing the work. You won't be causing, in fact, if anything, you'll be entering into the negative feedback loop, information that says, nope, don't make any ketones. We got enough. I've got an issue with that whole mindset of trying to get into ketosis.
It's a quick fix.
It's just like the protein thing. Again, it's just good marketing, because now keto is something that is so relevant and people are paying attention to. Marketing and companies are catching on to that, and they want to profit off of that.
Yeah. I mean, again, so I think they have their place. And I think in the future, some of the world records in some of the distance events will be set with people using ketone supplements during the event, because they've done the work. They've built the metabolic machinery. They've improved their efficiency, their metabolic efficiency, and their metabolic flexibility. So there's a place for them, but I don't think it's with a newbie starting up and saying, well, I bought a glucose monitor for $100, and I bought this and I bought that, and I took a ketone thing, and the next thing you know, I'm in ketosis. Wow, it must be working. No, it's not working.
No, for them to really get into the fat burning mode, you got to put in the work. It's not just a matter of
and the other thing which I find interesting is a lot of people in the keto space are suggesting that calories don't matter, and that it's all about the fat, and they're adding butter on top of steak, and thinking that I'm in ketosis, so all bets are off on calorie counting because it doesn't matter. Well, the only way you lose weight ultimately is by burning off more calories than you store. Full stop. So we have this calories in, calories out discussion. That gets somewhat hazy when you start to consider the quality of the calories. Like, are 2,000 calories of sugar the same as 2,000 calories of a balanced fat, protein, carbohydrate meal? And the answer is absolutely not.
Right.
So we should talk more in terms of what happens to the food that we eat, and how is it converted into energy, or how is it stored as energy? How is it burned off as energy? What is the impact of the different hormone systems on that? Insulin, glucagon, ghrelin, epinephrine, cortisol, all these different leptin, all these things that interplay as a result of the information that food is, because food is information, right?
Right.
And
one of my favorite quotes that you said was, "Every bite of food becomes a hormonal experience," which is so true. Seeing the food and how it affects your hormones.
Yeah, and it's it's different based on the macronutrient profile, and the quality of the food can alter everything from what happens with the salivary enzymes in your mouth, and going down the esophagus, and so on and so forth, and how the stomach reacts, and how long it stays in the stomach, and how quickly the stomach empties. And there's so many different things that enter here. It's interesting, and I suspect it's frustrating and complex for a lot of people, but I feel that's my job, is to educate people on how this happens, and to give the layperson an understanding of the more complex scientific elements of this, so that they can make the kind of decisions in their own life that would serve them toward achieving their goals.
One thing that I love about you is that your ego doesn't get in the way of you saying, okay, well, maybe I was not quite on the point when I talked about this 10 years ago. Yeah. And you're always open to new information. One thing I do want to ask you about, because I imagine during the 2 months that you were in ketosis, I imagine that you were measuring either blood or breath ketones. Did you find that your percent of protein that you ate decipher if you stayed in or out of ketosis? Because that's one thing I think a lot of people overestimate because protein can be turned into glucose.
Yeah, it can, but I think, again, I don't do percentages. I do absolute macros. So I would say, in the course of a day, I'd like to take in 100 grams of protein. And I use, typically in the book, we talk about your 0.7 grams times your lean body mass. Right. So that might be 105 to 110 grams of protein throughout the day for me. But then there's no real magic to one meal versus the other, because protein gets broken down into amino acids, and then there's this cool amino acid pool, this amino acid sink that the body has, the liver and the bloodstream and everything else. So and then that gets further enhanced by beta hydroxybutyrate, which is an epigenetic signaling factor, which causes you to recycle those more efficiently, retain them, and not expel them out in the urine. And so we get to the situation where, so for me, if I can get 105 grams of protein on average per day, and keep my carbs at between 20 grams and 50 grams per day, sometimes 60, and then I feather the difference with fat. So, I sometimes have like 1,700 calories in a day, and that's plenty for me. And it's, I never used to think that was possible, but now that I know what's going on, and how I know about the evolutionary benefit of ketosis, and the fact that it was contemplated to keep us alive during long periods of time when there was no access to food or little access to food, and not lose muscle mass and not lose concentration, and still be able to run fast and go catch something to kill, and do all and not get sick, and not be depressed. All those things, I continue to be amazed at how efficient and effective the body is once you tap into that ancient wisdom that is in the DNA.
It's like a fine car, and that's what I always tell people. Now that I'm in Orange County and I see Bentleys and Rolls Royces every day, our body is so much finer than those machines, and if we feed them the right tools, it functions perfectly. Now, I do want to ask you one more question because I value your time, and I know you have a limited amount of time. But before we go, what is your take on actual fasting, not just intermittent fasting?
So I used to be afraid of it, and now I'm not. Now I'm starting to think, and that's going to be like the next area of exploration for me.
Cool.
And the reason I was afraid of it is because I weigh 170. I weigh 165 now because I've been keto for so long, and I've again lost some of my visceral fat.
Right.
But
which is good for your health, that.
Absolutely. So yeah, I didn't want to hang on to that.
I actually posted a picture of you on my Facebook page with you topless, and one of the comments was, "Don't be nervous, just think about his abs." Anyway, go on.
When I did marathons, I raced at like 142. So I'm 25 pounds heavier than when I was a marathoner. So I feel like I'm a hard gainer. I feel like I fought really hard to maintain whatever muscle I have now. I'm able to keep most of it because I don't run anymore. I don't chew it up by being a sugar burner like I was.
Right.
I mostly do weights and I mostly do sprinting. But my new thesis is that we are mostly human when we're not eating. So if you look at a lion who eats a big, 60, 80, 90 pound meal, takes a nap, and then goes the next couple of days without eating, or an anaconda, or, I'm not suggesting that we're mimicking that, but
right.
What if we feed ourselves so much that our bodies never get around to repairing and restoring themselves? What if most of the reparation and restoration happens when we're not eating? And so if you give yourself a day or two of not eating, you can do some real serious repair. And I always knew about that from the research, and I read about it. It's kind of like me and the grains, right? I until I got rid of the grains and saw what was possible, I fought for my right to continue to eat grains, right?
Right.
Now with this whole fasting thing, I'm less concerned about going 2 or 3 days without eating and losing all my muscle mass that I worked so hard for.
Right.
I'm more interested in, the human body is so capable of existing on its own if you have some fat stored up, right? And
right.
you built the metabolic machinery to burn that fat. Because if you're a sugar burner, if you're a carbohydrate dependent person and you go on a fast for 3 or 4 days, it's freaking miserable, right?
Yeah.
You get headaches. You haven't built the metabolic machinery to access the fats and burn the ketone.
Right.
Once you've done the work, all that changes and it becomes this whole new realm of possibilities.
You know that I could probably talk to you for the entire afternoon, right? Seriously. Yeah. I thank you so much. I just looked at the clock and I know that we have taken more of your time than you have. So I just want to tell you thank you. I acknowledge you for you being a pioneer in a space that it was not popular when you first started years ago, and you went against the grain. And I love that. I want to acknowledge you for your movement, not just in health and fitness, but also the entrepreneur in you. We didn't even talk about that. And Cinthanie and I were talking about how amazing you are just in that realm. And so it's humans like you that make me want to be a better person and just live life to the fullest. I have thoroughly enjoyed this, way more than you even know. But tell the fans and followers that are listening to this where they can find you.
Okay. Mark's Daily Apple is the blog, and a new article every day for the last 11 years now.
That's crazy.
Primalblueprint.com is our e-com site. And then the Keto Reset Diet is the book coming out October 3rd, and you can pre-order it at ketoresetdiet.com.
Perfect. And this episode is going to be coming out right before it launches. So you know that I will be buying that firsthand. And I would love for you to be able to come back and do another interview at some point in time. But I just, I can't say enough wonderful things about you. Thank you so much. And we always end the Fitz and Healthy podcast with a saying that Cinthanie likes to tell our listeners.
You are a good person and you deserve good things to happen to you.
Amen.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right.
It's been a pleasure hanging out with you.
Thank you so much, Mark. I appreciate you and your time.
Thank you.
Make sure that you find us on social media. You can find Cinthanie on Instagram and Facebook at Cinthanie. So that's CINTHANIE, and on Snapchat at Cinthanie P. And find me on social media platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, all at Club Fitz Fitness. Remember, that's FITZ Fitness. And on Snapchat, just at Club Fitz. I appreciate your time listening so much. If you enjoyed this episode of the Fitz and Healthy podcast, can you please go do me a favor and go subscribe at whatever platform that it is that you listen to podcasts. Leave a review. We read every single review, and we appreciate the time that you take to leave your thoughts and opinions. Now, also remember, while I am a medical doctor, the information I provide here is not intended to provide medical advice or a professional diagnosis, opinion, treatment, or services to you or to any other individual. I am providing general information for educational and informational purposes only, and it is not a substitute for medical or professional care. You should not use this information in place of a visit, call, consultation, or the advice of your physician or other healthcare provider. The information I share is not intended to treat, cure, or diagnose any disease or medical condition. if you believe you have a medical emergency, just call 911 immediately or your physician. Now, enough of that medical legal jargon. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I appreciate your time. Now go live a Fitz and healthy life.